آقای لاریجانی دست در دست وزیر امور خارجه.
آقای دکتر این که در کنار هم می‌بینیم هر دو عزیزا با هم وجود داره این تفاهم و توافق بین شورای امنیت و وزارت خارجه ما بعضی روزا چرا نه بعضی خیلی تلاش میکنن شاید بخوام
نه اصلا خیلی راحت با هم دیگه داریم کار میکنیم. بالاخره برای این نظام هستیم، در مسئولیتی که داریم باید مکمل هم.
مطالبتون درست در راه.
اونایی که بیرون میگم ما که میدونیم شما در کنار همین.
به ساحت نورانی امام بزرگوار ادای احترام میکنم و یاد شهدای گرانقدر اخیر رئیس جمهور سخت‌کوش و متواضع و همراهان ایشان را گرامی می‌دارم و ضمن همدردی با مردم مظلوم و مقاوم غزه و رفح به سردار بزرگ مقاومت شهید سلیمانی ادای احترام میکنم. جامعه ما به اندازه زیادی از اختلافات آسیب دیده است. در دولت مد نظر من هر کار بلد و توانایی با هر سلیقه سیاسی به کار گرفته می شود. ما به ملت قوی و دولت زمین ساز می رسیم.
Hi.
Hi, my friend.
How are you doing?
Nice. Fighting every time, every minute, every second, because we are in a turning point time, I
Of
think.
course.
Uh,
Of course.
well, I don't want to spare so much because you have only 1 hour time. Welcome back to your home of anti-imperialist communication guerrilla warfare. I cannot begin today without mentioning the terrible news of the assassination of the several revolutionary leaders in Iran, the real leaders of the human world, and especially that of the revolutionary and martyr hero Ali Larijani. I would like to convey to you the pain of the anti-imperialist family and also our certainty of the victory that will come for Iran, and thanks to Iran, also for all humanity. What is your first thought after this assassination of the great revolutionary human being Ali Larijani?
It was very sad to hear the news, but he spoke of martyrdom just a couple of days ago in his last social media statement. He spoke about, he quoted Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, when he was threatened by the Israelis to be killed. He quoted Imam Hussein and said that that life with the oppressors is full of regrets, and that martyrdom is a victory. I don't recall the exact quote, but that is basically what he said. He feared no death. And as I'm sure you've seen the many millions of Iranians on the streets every night under missile attacks. They are unafraid of death. They are determined to defeat the Trump regime and the Zionist regime and their proxies. So while it is painful to see these scenes, but it does also, it boosts one's morale when one sees the determination of the people in Iran to preserve their sovereignty, to continue supporting the Palestinian people who are facing extermination, and to defy the empire.
That's true. I have the coincidence that the last two programs I made, one in the day before and one yesterday, we put the image of the LARUDEE without knowing that he could be martyred. But in the last one, when I put it, I was incredible on that idea, and there is not confirmation. And we were like with the phrase that LARUDEE told some days before the 15th of March, in fact, that he considered, like Hussein, that the victory is always, because the martyrdom is not is happiness, and the real pity is to be living within the evil without dignity. Well, today I want to share my interview in a more internationalist way, adapted to the limited time we have. I bring greetings and questions from a dozen comrades, not a dozen, but 10 or something like that, comrades from different countries, including 3 from the aggressor country, you say. I hope this will help us to better address together everything that is happening in the West from within our anti-imperialist family. I show you the first one, and I hope your answer for each one question. Here is Kostas Isykos from Greece.
Good morning from Athens. This is Kostas Isykos, former Minister of Defense 2015, and a great supporter of humanity, where Iran is together with humanity today, along with Palestine and so many other nations and peoples which are being they're trying to exterminate every sense of independence against neocolonialism by the United States. My very short and brief question to you, dear friend, Professor Marandi, is the following. The West, the Euro-Atlantic centers of so-called world power, seem to believe that Iran will be finished. And we all know here that this is not true. But mainstream media is trying to convince us that killing the leaders and the innocent in Iran, killing many politicians, many political leaders, along with children, little girls, is perhaps a sign of winning their war. Can you please tell us briefly why the United States and its puppets from the European Union will not be able to beat this heroic people, to win this lost war from the beginning, and why Israel is heading towards something that could be described as a total loss for Israel, both strategically, geopolitically, and socially. This is my question, and I'm sure you know much better than we do here in the West why this war will not have a good end for the West, the United States, the European Union, and its few puppet allies in Latin America like Mr. Milei and others. Thank you, and all our solidarity to the Iranian people, to your government.
Yes, Marandi.
Well, I'm very grateful for his very kind words. Excuse me. And his solidarity, and the solidarity of all of our brothers and sisters and comrades across the world and across Europe and North America as well. The Israeli regime obviously is the biggest loser in all this because it has been exposed for what it really is. Ever since the genocide in Gaza began, there has not been a day, an hour, a minute, a second where the Israeli regime has not exposed itself for the ethno-supremacist genocidal regime that it is. And people across the world are waking up, and they're reading history, and they're learning about the reality, and they're finding out that these people came from abroad and took the land and killed the people and expelled them. This is something that most people did not even know 2-3 years ago. So this Holocaust, this ongoing Holocaust in Gaza, and the slaughter that they're committing in Lebanon, and the project to bring about Al-Qaeda in Syria, their government in ISIS and Al-Qaeda government in Syria, and of course the war against Iran, all of these together have destroyed the sense of legitimacy that the Israeli regime tried to project across the world. With regards to Iran, I think it's clear that this illegal war, which is not the first, the United States has been involved in 3 illegal wars against Iran. It encouraged Saddam Hussein to invade Iran in the 1980s, and then it participated in the war alongside Saddam Hussein during the last months of the war. Last year, we all remember how they were negotiating with Iran, but they were secretly conspiring to attack, and they launched the second war, and then this war. The Iranian people are determined to bring an end to this cycle and to make sure that the United States can never do this again. And so they are extraordinarily steadfast. They see that the enemy is dishonest, and even senior officials in the United States, we saw one just yesterday, resign because he said Iran was no threat. He said that the United States carried out this war on behalf of Israel, and the Israeli regime lobby, the Zionist lobby. Basically what we all knew. Now a Trump appointee has admitted this and resigned. So Iranians recognize that the United States is the aggressor. And contrary to the propaganda in the West, Iranian people have always been united. They've always supported their state, their constitution, their identity, contrary to Western media propaganda. Western media is controlled by the Epstein class, by the Zionists, by the oligarchs, just like Western governments are. So, and people now across the world are seeing through the propaganda. Increasingly, they don't believe them anymore. And they're rethinking their views of Iran completely. A lot of people are seeing millions of people, millions of Iranians on the streets every night under missile fire, steadfast, and asking themselves if the so-called regime, like the West likes to call it, if it is so unpopular, why are millions of people on the streets risking death to defy the United States, to support the state, to support the armed forces, and to support the leadership? So people across the world are waking up to the reality that the Iranian people have said no to the West, that they said we will resist and defy the West. And we all know, both in Iran and across the world, that Iran has 2 sins that are unforgivable. One, that it wants to be independent. 2, it supports the oppressed. Whether it's in Cuba or Venezuela, those who are under the boots of empire, or in Palestine, which particularly angers Western regimes. But Iran will continue to do so because it is a part of our identity. The story of Hussein ibn Ali, Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, the Holy Prophet, in Karbala, and his sister Zainab, if Western officials, if Western analysts, if decision makers in the West had read his story and understood his influence on Iranian society and how it is very deep, it has a huge role in Iranian culture, and the principled views of Iranians in supporting the oppressed against the oppressor, they would have never attacked Iran.
I show you now Paul LARUDEE from USA.
Hello, Dr. Marandi. My name is Paul LARUDEE, and I had the pleasure of meeting you, however briefly, at the Damaros Hotel in Damascus some years ago, and I hope that we will meet again. I was born in Iran to an Iranian father, but I've lived in the US for the past 75 years. You probably know the Iranian community here better than I do, but I believe that most of it is loyal to the existing Iranian government. I think that only a crazy but wealthy minority of Iranian Americans oppose the Iranian government, and the membership of NIAC, the National Lobbying Group, reflects this fact. Of course, it's no surprise that the US government supports the crazies, but many US citizens, including myself, hate this war and support Iran's right to defend itself. In fact, I say so frequently as a guest on Iranian Press TV. Thank you for being such an eloquent analyst for all of us. My question to you is, given the history of negotiations with the United States, the Iranian government is understandably refusing ceasefire negotiations. But all wars eventually end. Could you please offer your assessment of how and under what circumstances, terms, and conditions this one is likely to be concluded, preferably productively, but even if not? Thank you.
Again, I'd like to thank him for his very kind words and solidarity. And what he says about the Iranian diaspora is actually quite true. And contrary to what some may think, because they watch Western media. Whenever I've traveled to the West, and I've been in areas where there have been lots of Iranians, I've always been welcomed and people have been friendly. We have to keep in mind that the West, Western intelligence agencies, Western governments, fund tens of thousands of Iranians. There are hundreds of media outlets in the West against Iran in Persian that are all funded by Western intelligence agencies or agencies belonging to the US government or Western governments. And there are many thousands of people just working in troll farms. One troll farm is in Albania, which that alone has maybe 3,000 to 4,000, somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 people. So you can imagine how many people are being paid, and obviously those people would be on the streets whenever their overlords demand them to be on the streets. But ordinary Iranians are outraged by this war of aggression, this murderous war of aggression. As he rightly pointed out, we are not negotiating with the United States. We have no interest in negotiating with the United States, and it's obvious why. We've negotiated before, and every time as we negotiated, they bombed us. So the only way that this war will end, and it's absolutely correct that wars ultimately come to an end, is when the facts on the ground change. When the Iranians create a situation where they know that in future this will not be repeated. We know that in a ceasefire, all that the United States and the Israeli regime will do is they'll regroup, rearm themselves, and attack again, because this is the second war in less than a year that they impose on us. So Iran will do the sort of damage to the United States and its proxies and allies that will make it regret launching a war. But also Iran will demand other things as well. It will make sure that its allies across the region are part of this change in mentality, and that they too feel safe and secure in the future. And Iran will demand compensation, and it will get that compensation. It may be from the regimes in the Persian Gulf that host US bases and have blood on their hands, but Iran will do that. So when the facts on the ground change, and Iran feels confident that no one in the West will ever think about attacking Iran again, that will probably be close to the point where the conflict comes to an end.
In fact, Abbas Araghchi, in an interview yesterday, told that We don't believe in a ceasefire. We believe in the ending the war, and ending the war means exactly ending the war on all fronts, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Iran, and in other countries in the region. It's important how he links the reality and the war to all the wars in the region that is the same guilty origin. Well, I go to now a Mexican comrade, Christian Nader. Here it is.
Hello, I'm Christian Nader. I'm a historian and political analyst in Mexico City, where I am right now. I work with anti-imperialistas.com and also in Chamuco Media here in Mexico City, and also with some platforms and media from the global south, such as, Telesur, Russia Today, and Hispan TV from the Islamic Republic of Iran in Spanish language. First of all, it's a pleasure and a honor to be with Mohammad Marandi, a great human being. I have met him in 2 times. And also, for my point of view, the most important geopolitical analyst, not just in the Islamic Republic of Iran, but also in the global south. And my question for him is the next one. Right now, of course, all the people talk about the petro-monarchies of the Gulf, of the Arabian Peninsula, such as Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, even the Hashemites in the other side of the peninsula. But there are rarely we hear about other Islamic countries, such as Azerbaijan, Pakistan, and Turkey. I would like to know, right now in this phase of aggression against the Islamic Republic, what is the role of Turkey, of Azerbaijan, the 2 Turkic countries in Anatolia and in the Caucasus, and also with Pakistan, because, for example, the government of Baku and the government of Ankara, all the time they say that they're in favor of the struggle of Palestine and even of Iran, but we have seen that they are agents and puppets of the empire. And the mystery role for me is the position of the government of Islamabad, the government of Pakistan. What is their role right now, their connection with the resistance, or maybe this role they have been playing for the last 70 years in relation with the Anglo-Zionist entity? So that will be the question. The role right now in favor or against Iran by the Islamic, by Turkey, by Azerbaijan, and of course by Pakistan. And I just want to say all my force and all my best wishes to the people of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we are with you. And victory, it's almost a victory. Thank you.
I would like to thank him for his very kind words too, and I obviously just say an ordinary person, but the cause is so obviously the right cause that it's not difficult for me to defend it, despite the propaganda of the West, because it's clear as day, and people across the global South see right through Western propaganda increasingly. And of course, that's with the help of the excellent people that have been asking questions, among others. Pakistan has not shown hostility towards Iran. And even though the country is vulnerable itself, because Western intelligence agencies use the Iranian-Pakistani border to support Takfiri terrorists, semi-ISIS, groups that are similar to ISIS. They support those groups to attack Iran. And Pakistan, because of its internal problems and the weakness that exists in the country, has difficulty in protecting that border. But it has not shown any ill will towards Iran during the war. But that is not true about the regime in Baku. The regime in Baku is a close ally of Israel. The Israeli regime, it sells oil to the Israeli regime throughout the genocide in Gaza. They've been selling oil at a discounted price. And they're also very close to the Trump regime. The same is true, sadly, with Turkey. Erdogan is a business partner with Israel. He transports oil from Baku, and throughout this genocide and the war today, he has been doing business with them and sending them oil that is used by the Israelis to wage war and to slaughter. And also he allows NATO AWACS jets to fly over Turkey to gather information about Iran's defenses and offensive capabilities as we speak. And he allows the US to use bases in Turkey to help the American military in its offensive and defensive posture against Iran. So Erdogan is he's a part of the empire. He's an ally of Trump. When Trump went to Egypt for that disgraceful meeting to whitewash his role in the genocide in Gaza, Erdogan went there, and Trump said that whenever I needed him, he was there for me. He's a great friend. And Erdogan put his hand on his chest like a very loyal friend. So I think everyone has been exposed, and no one can hide behind the masks that they used to hide behind in saying that they support the Palestinian cause, whereas in fact they're simply tools of empire. But that, I think, itself may be something that makes people unhappy, but in a sense it's also a good thing. When the masks are off, resistance knows how to function better. We all know who our friends are and who our foes are, who's a hypocrite and who's honest. But the fact is that in Turkey, in Azerbaijan is a family dictatorship, like these Arab family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf. People across the region and beyond, their hearts are with Iran. Their hearts are with Palestine. Their hearts are with Hezbollah. Their hearts are with the resistance. So these despots can continue to govern, but people have woken up. And I think that these despots should be fearful about their own future, because the dam may burst.
I think in the Western Asia and in Asia all around, they are more or less conscious of the situation, but in the Western countries, the Western evil, they are flying forward. They are trying to go ahead with this because they don't know how to end the war and how to finish this without losing everything. What they are doing now. I think that is the way they are doing. Well,
yes, I think Western regimes are going down a very dangerous road, and they will ultimately lose. They will not win this war, and Iran will ensure that. But I think people in the West, many are waking up. Maybe not as much as in the global South, but many people are waking up.
Yes, something of the global South, not, but the Western countries also, like me and Daniel Lobato. Daniel Lobato is here from Spain.
Salam, it's a very pleasure to be part of this event. Thank you, TXEMA, Mamnoon, Dr. Marandi. We are at a point in the regional war of decolonization where nearly all fronts are active, with the exception of Yemen, which is keeping its finger on the trigger in anticipation of other potential actors. We know that the radioactive core of imperialistic oppression in the region is the settler colony established nearly 80 years ago. There are some similarities to the regional war that apartheid South Africa waged against indigenous liberation groups and governments in Namibia, Angola, Mozambique, as the regime's end approach. Perhaps there was a time up until 30 years ago when a single democratic state based on equality for all settlers and natives alike might have been possible in Palestine. Certainly never the injustice of the so-called two-state solution. For example, the martyr leader Ali Khamenei, long-time advocate for a referendum for all inhabitants of the three parts of Palestine, but in last decades, and especially during the 2.5 years of genocide, it has become clear that this is now impossible. It's absurd to propose a naive one-state solution where the natives must be forced to coexist with their genocidal oppressors. Moreover, it will be completely unrealistic. It will never happen. Therefore, the only possible scenario is the expelling or extermination of millions of native Palestinians, or the flight of millions of Zionist settlers from Palestine, just as million Portuguese fled Angola and Mozambique, or millions of French fled Algeria. The longer the nations delay accepting this reality, the more suffering will be. Dr. Marandi, what is your perspective on this path of sacrifice? Thank you very much, Mamnoon.
Again, I thank him for his kind words. I think that that's a very important point that he raised about Southern Africa. And ultimately, it was under the weight of its own evil existence and the isolation that it had caused through the awakening of people across the world, that the regime had to collapse. When I was young, I was a part of I was an activist against apartheid in Palestine, but also apartheid in South Africa. These were two issues that I was active on. And back then, I really never thought that apartheid in South Africa would collapse so soon. I thought it would take many, many more years for the regime to fall. Now, of course, what was created after the fall was not ideal, and many in South Africa are unhappy, but at least that open racism and that racial hierarchy that was official back then, that no longer exists. In the case of Palestine, the fight is more difficult because the West is very supportive of ethno-supremacism in Palestine and very racist towards the Palestinian people. We saw how during the past 2.5 years, Western media, Western governments have been fully supportive of Israel, and they refuse to call this Holocaust a genocide, and they try to make excuses for it no matter what it does, whether it attacks Iran, whether it attacks Lebanon, whether it helps bring ISIS and Al-Qaeda to power in Syria. No matter what it does, the West will justify it and support it. But the West is on the decline, and the war against Iran, I think, is a turning point. The Islamic Republic of Iran and the Axis of Resistance are a force that the West has underestimated. They underestimate the will of the people and the influence of Ashura and Karbala and Imam Hussein and Zainab on the will of the Iranian people and the will of the people in Lebanon and in Yemen, and the resolve of these people not to allow the Palestinian people to be exterminated. And people across the region are waking up to the fact that their regimes are complicit in what the empire is doing. And I think this awakening is the most important element of all. The decline of the empire means the decline of the Israeli regime, because everything that the Israeli regime has comes from the empire. The Israeli regime is a weak, vulnerable entity. It receives tens of billions of dollars a year from the West through different means just to sustain itself and to slaughter people. But as the West declines, that aid becomes less substantial. And as people in the West wake up to the fact that they are prisoners of Zionism, we just saw the senior security chief in the United States resign, saying that this war was because of the Zionist lobby. People are waking up, young people in particular. So the West is turning against the Israeli regime. People in the region are waking up. People in the region are seeing through the propaganda against Iran and the Axis of Resistance. None of this is good news for the Israeli regime. I don't know when the regime will fall, but I think it is destined to collapse. And all the signs are that things will progressively get worse for the apartheid genocidal regime in Tel Aviv.
Inshallah, USA, Adrienne Pine here for you.
Professor Marandi, it's an honor to be addressing you. My name is Adrienne Pine. I'm in the United States. My question for you has to do with how those of us in the U.S. anti-war movement can do a better job counteracting the manufactured consent that has come from the voices of the Iranian diaspora that are exclusively featured in corporate media. You are really the only Iranian expert who I have seen in media in the United States who has not just opposed the war, but also oppose the justification for it. And we know from the recent poll by the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft that there is the majority of Iranians in the United States do not support this war. And yet all we have heard in the media is either from Iranian Americans, that is, who claim to speak for Iran and are gung-ho supporting the murder of children, the murder of innocent civilians and civilian targets, saying it's necessary to quote unquote save Iran, or we're hearing that regime change needs to happen, but just not this way. When in fact there is the much more legitimate position, which is that the United States does not need to be engaged in imperial endeavors around the world and should not be engaged in them, and that countries have a right to their sovereignty. But it's hard to get around the fact that the only voices that are amplified claiming to speak for Iran are basically ones that support the war. This is, of course, a problem that we have, those of us in the anti-war movement, in confronting the fascist diasporas from Venezuela and Cuba who claim to speak for their countries and ask for them to be bombed and say that regime change is necessary and ask for the United States to save them. And it's a real challenge given neoliberal identity reductionism in the United States. So my question for you then is really how can we do a better job here in the United States as an anti-imperialist, anti-war movement in amplifying Iranian voices who not only oppose this war, but disagree with its justification, and have been providing evidence for that in media in other languages, in media in other countries, but that is just simply not reaching people in the United States. Thank you so much.
Well, and not only in the USA regime, but always in the Europe regimes, there is people like that support, don't support the war, but I always support the justification, the arguments that demonize the Iran and the regime of Iran. They say that like Varoufakis and others, and then I am fed up with this. So go ahead with the answer to Adrienne Pine. So, yeah.
Well, again, I thank her for her very kind words. There are quite a few young Iranians who are active online, but they are invited by alternative media usually. I've introduced some myself to different media outlets, but in my own case, Western media very rarely interviews me, but when there is an interview, some people online spread the word, and I guess I'm viewed more often than because of the support of activists, anti-war activists, and anti-imperialist activists, and supporters of decolonization. I really have no advice to give to you, because I'm sure you're the expert and you would know best how to deal with this. Probably one of the things that can be done is to create awareness about Iran, because it is they've been demonizing Iran for 47 years. And so many people think that somehow Iran is evil. So I think she made a very good point. Some say, let's bomb it. Some say, well, it's bad, but let's not bomb it. Both these arguments are made by people who are advocating evil. The real evil is not Iran. It is the imperialist powers that bomb. Whether they agree with the bombing or not, the real question that they have to ask is whether the empire is evil. Instead of saying Iran is evil, instead of saying Maduro is evil, instead of saying Cuba is evil, but let's not bomb Cuba, let's not starve Cuba, the question should be reversed, or at least the statement, I should say, should be reversed. The United States is evil, not Cuba. The United States is evil, not Venezuela. The United States is evil and its Western allies, not Iran. That, I think, can be done to a degree through creating awareness. There are very few books that I can, in English, that are, I think, accurate when it comes to Iran. One is an old book, actually, called Going to Tehran, which was written by Flint and Hilary Leverett, who both worked in the White House. Ironically, two people who were in power have written probably the best book that I've seen in the English language. The other is to promote alternative media. The one I'm often involved in, alternative media. You can find those, and I'm sure you know of them, but you can find them in my Telegram channel, or when I tweet my interviews on them on my Twitter account. You can find them. They often have very good guests, and they're very informative, and they're much better than Western media. And the more we push people towards this sort of media and away from legacy media or Epstein class controlled media, the better. But I think that our friends across the world are doing a very good job. People are waking up, and we should never be discouraged by what appears in front of us in the Western media. We should never feel that it's hopeless. We work because it's the right thing to do. We push because we are on the side of right, and ultimately, I have no doubt that we will see success.
Well, I saw you now another one from USA, the third and last from USA that I take here is Dan KOVALIK from USA.
So hello, I am Dan KOVALIK coming to you from Pittsburgh, PA in the United States. And first of all, I want to say I think that the Islamic Republic of Iran is fighting for all of humanity. The United States, which is my country, and Israel are the enemies of humanity. The U.S. and Israel started this war against Iran illegally, immorally, without provocation, without claims of defense. And Iran is not only defending itself, but defending the Palestinian people. And again, defending civilization against some of the worst offenders of international law and humanity in all of history. So I want to say I am on the side of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I visited there in 2017 and was very impressed, of course, with this civilization that has existed for thousands of years, which invented chess and has some of the greatest antiquities and historic relics in the world. And I am very sad to see a lot of those things being destroyed as we speak. And so I send you my solidarity, and I oppose my own government in waging this unprovoked war against you. And with that, I also want to say hello to Dr. Marandi, who I have followed very closely over the years. You are an incredible spokesperson, again, not just for Iran, but for humanity. My big question to you is, how do you keep going, through this darkness that is being imposed on you and your family and your people and your country? What keeps you going? Those of us in the West, if we go without a meal, we are, despondent. But you are facing something truly horrific. So please tell us how you keep going. What keeps you motivated to keep fighting? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words again. I think that there are many of us who are doing the same thing, and I'm quite sure that working in the United States against the narratives of the empire is no easy task. And therefore, I don't think that anything that the questioners, those who are posing the questions, have done is of less importance than what I and others inside Iran are doing or attempting to do. We're all the same. We all are fighting injustice, and we are all fighting very powerful narratives. And it can be tiring or discouraging for many, but the very fact that so many people remain resilient and continue the struggle shows that our friends and sisters and brothers and comrades are not to be deterred. They're not. Their wills will not be broken, and they are gaining ground. People across the world are waking up. I think it's clear. I personally, what makes me steadfast is my belief in God, my belief that the cause is just, and it's been just from the beginning, since I've been a part of this revolution. Just like supporting the people of Cuba is just like supporting the people of Venezuela against the empire is just like supporting the people of apartheid South Africa, and of course Palestine, is just. And my religious identity tells me that social justice is extremely important. It is important both at home, and justice is important across the world. So, as I said earlier, the heroic events in Karbala, where the grandson of the Prophet was steadfast against the despot of his time and sacrificed everything for the people, that is deeply embedded in our culture and across the axis of resistance. What Imam Hussein did, what his sister did to spread the message, her heroic role was the role that we are playing today, those of us who are speaking out against against the enemies of the resistance. And of course, those who are fighting on the battlefields are like Imam Hussein. So for me, what all of us are doing is something that is right, and therefore, whenever our friends feel depressed, they should remember that what is important is not their success. What is important is the fact that they're doing the right thing. But alongside that, inevitably comes success. Decades ago, we were far fewer in number. I think all of the questioners remember 20, 30 years ago, when it seemed that we had reached in the eyes of many, the end of history, and that the empire was going to rule forever. And it seemed very much more difficult back then, and it was much more difficult to speak against the powers that existed. So if we look at that, despite the darkness, despite the endless wars, despite the massacres, despite the daily slaughter that we see, people are waking up. And so we should all be encouraged, and we're all doing the same thing, and we're all in the same boat, and hopefully we will all be able to collectively bring about change.
Good morning, Professor Marandi. It's an honor to be talking to you. My name is Roberta Rivolta. I'm an Italian activist and a great supporter of Iran, which I think is a beacon for all the countries fighting for their independence. First of all, I'd like to offer my condolences for the loss of your supreme guide. It's a great loss not only for Iran, but for the whole humanity. And then, of course, I'd like to congratulate with you for the appointment of the new guide, who I trust will prove a worthy successor of his father. My question is this. We know that Iran has been in the crosshairs of the United States for a long time, and we know that the United States have a long history of never-ending wars that leave the countries torn apart. As we have seen, their goal seems not to win the wars, but to leave chaos and disruption behind them. Some analysts are saying that even the closure of the Strait of Hormuz had already been taken into account, and that their real goal is to provoke a global crisis which will see them as the only country unaffected by the consequences of the war, as already happened during the Second World War. I'd like to know your thoughts about this, and can it be a possible countermeasure to such a destructive plan? Thank you, and all my respect and admiration for your country, which is teaching a lesson in justice and indignity to the whole world in these days. Bye, thank you.
Roberta Rivolta from Italy.
Thank you very much for your kind words. She is very kind, and she's posing a very important and difficult question to answer. I think that it is true that the Trump regime and the elites in the United States are willing to sacrifice everyone for their own interests and interests of the Zionist oligarchy and the Epstein class. But I don't think that it is going to work. We've seen how even Europe, who's been always a very faithful ally to the empire, the European elites, of course, not the people who are resisting, but the elites have always been loyal, but we see that the United States really doesn't care much about Europe either. They're willing to sacrifice Europe on multiple fronts and against multiple so-called foes. But I think that the empire is collapsing, and the divide in the United States, I think, shows this, and the collapse of the middle class is an indication of the fact that things are not going well. The United States, after the Second World War, had a thriving middle class, and it was really the center of the global economy. They were, by some estimates, up to 60% of the global economy, and some others say half. But that has declined. And with the collapse of the middle class, which ironically increased in pace after the collapse of the Soviet Union for reasons that I'm sure you all know, that the West started to deregulate and decrease subsidies for the vulnerable because they no longer feared them tilting towards the Eastern Bloc. So neoliberalism thrived under Clinton, and it continued to, I think, destroy the United States from within. And then, of course, we had the endless wars. So I think that the United States has really emptied itself out in many ways. And we are heading for crisis, no doubt about that. This energy crisis is approaching, and it will hit hard. It will hit everyone hard. And it is, of course, the doing of Netanyahu, Trump, and their cronies and the Epstein class. But I don't believe that they're very intelligent, and I don't believe they're very knowledgeable. I think in their arrogance, they're behaving foolishly. And I think ultimately this is turning the world against the empire. It is turning its own people against the empire. Many people in the United States may be very much under, and I'm sure they are, influenced by anti-Iranian propaganda. But they see this war as a bad thing. And the very fact that a key individual in the Trump regime has resigned, I think that shows that all is not well in the empire. But in any case, however, through whatever lens we look at this and however we interpret the situation, our responsibility is to do what we are doing, what you are doing. And that is to continue the struggle, to awaken people, and pray for the best. I'm confident that the empire will fail. But even if one thinks that the empire has a grand conspiracy through a crisis or a grand plan, let's say, because some people would misuse the term conspiracy, a plan behind this crisis, they're not necessarily as smart as they think they are. And I think the last few years have shown that, the way in which the world has turned against them and their own people have turned against them. So we have to push, and whatever the plan is, or if there is no plan, we have to defend the press and hit out with our words at the oppressor, and hopefully we will see the empire collapse in our lifetime.
Yes, I think so, and I think that the China and Russia are linked to this victory or defeat of the humanity. And here we are with Russia, from the new territories of Donbass, ANDREI KOCHETOV.
Dear comrades, my name is ANDREI KOCHETOV. Now I'm in Melitopol city. This is the center of one of new regions of Russia Federation, Zaporozhye region. And behind me you can see the new monument of our city, the monument to the comrade Stalin. And I want to say, once again, the United States had plugged an entire region into the abyss of war. Once again, civilians are being killed. We, the residents of the new regions of the Russia Federation, are sincerely concerned and following what is happening in Iran. We support the people of Iran in their resistance to American Zionist aggression. We are impressed by your courage. Just like the Russian Federation in Ukraine, you are resisting the aggression of global imperialism. We sincerely wish you victory in this war. Victory will be on our side. To be honest, I don't have any specific vision for Comrade Marandi. In fact, there are so many of them that it doesn't make sense to spend time on them now. I'm only sincerely wish for us to meet after the war and work together to strengthen the long-lasting friendship between our nations. Good luck and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Although I don't know my fate, but if the war ends and I am still here, I would be more than honored to meet you. I would be honored to meet all of the friends who've posed questions in Tehran to celebrate, and hopefully one day in Palestine to celebrate. I think that it is a fact that the behavior of the West across the globe has created a great understanding among people everywhere, because we are all in the same boat. We all have similar histories and experiences with Western empire. Even people in the West, they are increasingly victims. Many were always victims, and more people who are being pushed into poverty through these endless wars and neoliberalism, they too are victims like the rest of us. The West uses the worst of the worst to pursue their policies. Terrorist groups in Iran, ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria and across the Arab world, in Libya and Iraq and Lebanon. It uses Zionism in Palestine. It uses not neo-Nazis and fanatics in Ukraine and elsewhere. Wherever it serves its interests, it will deploy the worst of the worst. It will fund the worst of the worst. And I think that itself is something that makes us all understand one another much better because our experiences are so similar with the West. And that, I think, is another sign of encouragement. People are waking up not only to their own realities, but to the realities that we're all experiencing or have been experiencing. So I, again, see this as a sign to be optimistic. No one should be depressed. No one should feel despair. We have too much work to do to have the spare time to feel despair. Whenever you feel depressed and feel despair, get active, go do something, write something, put something out on social media, protest, boycott goods from the empire. Even the small things, they'll make you feel better.
We are nearly finishing with Chile, TITO, TRICOT.
Dear brothers and sisters, my name is Dr. Tito TRICOT from Chile, and from this faraway country, I would like to express my full and sincere solidarity with Iran and its heroic people, which are at the moment, no doubt, leading the world's resistance movement against Zionism and imperialism. Most especially, I would like particularly express my sorrow for the martyrdom of Brother Ali Larijani, a key figure in Iran's political arena. Another martyr, but also another lighthouse which will illuminate your fight against imperialism. I have no doubt whatsoever that you shall overcome. Do you think that the United States have won the war, as President Trump has stated so many times?
I am very confident that the United States has lost the war already, the Trump regime. And I think the Israeli regime has lost the war. And each day that goes by will only make this defeat worse for them. Of course, there's much suffering among Iranians, among the Lebanese, among the Palestinians, among the resistance in Iraq. And of course, in the days and weeks ahead, among our sisters and brothers in Yemen. But the war must go on, and the resistance must continue, so that the empire is ultimately defeated. I too salute you and all of our friends in Latin America, as well as in Asia and Africa and across the West as well. And I believe sincerely that this global solidarity is one sign of the defeat of Washington, of the United States, of the empire, of the Epstein class. And going back to what I said earlier, and to confirm and in full agreement with what you said, the blood of the martyrs strengthens the cause. Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, and his sister, their struggle was well over 1,000 years ago. And yet today, their struggle, which is based upon the values of the Holy Prophet and the prophets before, Jesus and Moses and Abraham, That is the foundation of the struggle today in Iran. So what happened in the past influences what happens today. The martyrs for freedom across the world and for justice, wherever they may be, their blood strengthens the cause. And this is something that the materialistic and selfish and corrupt empire cannot comprehend, because everything they do is for self-interest. They cannot comprehend this aspect of our human existence, and that, I have no doubt, is what will ultimately lead to their failure and to the victory of the oppressed across the world.
We have the final video from Ireland, an Irish comrade, Hughes. If you have enough time, I put that video and we finish. It's okay?
Okay.
Okay, I go then with Hughes. He was yesterday record this video in front of the manifestation that he was in against a company of the collaborators against Palestine, Iran, and all of.
Just recording this video here. It's currently St. Patrick's Day in Belfast, 17th of March. We're outside Talis, which is a British munitions factory that's sending military components to the Zionist, immoral Israeli rogue regime. It proves that Britain is fully complicit in the ongoing genocide in Gaza, the illegal war in both southern Lebanon, Beirut, Tehran, and across the region. Now, on St. Paddy's Day, we have Irish politicians in Washington celebrating St. Patrick's Day with a genocidal regime in Washington DC. While the Irish government and the Spanish government and the Norwegian government and others claim to support Palestine, it's literally, when you scratch the surface, you will see the deceit underneath. What they say in public is they appease their own population. What they do in private is to continue to endorse the genocide in Gaza and now the war on Iran. I think the Irish government did not endorse the new Iranian ambassador to Ireland. I believe the Spanish Prime Minister, while he claims to support Palestine, actually accuses Palestinian resistance of being terrorists. And I'd like to pose a question to Professor Marandi. Recently we have witnessed the religious indoctrination of the United States Army. Is the American administration and the American Defense Forces, are they being turned into like a religious version, Christian religious version of the IDF, of the IOF? They're talking about Armageddon, they're talking about the right of Israel to build the third temple on the ruins of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Are we witnessing what was once a colonial imperialist footprint in the Levant, the Zionist entity, now controlling the American armed forces through pseudo-religious indoctrination, where Christians and Judaic Zionists will walk side by side into Armageddon? And do these Christians that are invoking the Bible, prophecy, the Messianic return, do they realise that these people that they are supporting in a Zionist state, that they believe that it's the Jews who will inherit the earth, and it's the Christians and others who, if they do not convert to Zionism, will be murdered? So is religion now the bedrock of an aspect of the American administration war against Islam, against people of colour, in this racist, fascist endeavour to create a Pax Judaica New World Order?
Yes, I think that that is absolutely correct. Although I believe that Christians in the United States are waking up to the reality of Christian Zionism. And Christian Zionism is on the decline. And Jews in the United States are increasingly seeing themselves as anti-Zionist. Young Jews in the United States, many of them have turned against the Israeli regime despite the propaganda, despite all the efforts of the Zionist community to keep them in line. So we should be optimistic. The Christian Zionists believe that Christ supports genocide. But they don't believe that. That's what they want people to believe. But Christians across the United States who are increasingly shunning Zionism know that Jesus was the supporter of the oppressed, just like Moses was. And the inheritors of the earth are the oppressed. And all those heroes that were standing behind him may be small in number, but it is these people who will ultimately push us in the right direction. And people across the world who stand up against the murderous empire, that collectively they will bring it down. I'm not saying that we're going to be living in a utopia, but we always strive for one. And I believe that ultimately the world will change for the better. And whether you believe that or not, the important thing is for you to do the right thing and to keep up the struggle and to keep trying to waken up the people around you and across the globe. And I'm sure that collectively we will all succeed. We may not live to see that day, but that day will come. And for those of us who do not live to see that day, we're in God's hands.
For me, my last words, for me, the real question to myself is whether it's becoming increasingly clear from Iran that they are not alone in facing this monster of evil, and that in addition to their obvious allies, Yemen and the Palestinian, Lebanese and Iraqi resistance movements, Russia, China, other Asian countries are also showing themselves to be willing to defend Iran. And I also want to ask whether the Persian consensus regarding the future of homeland and dignity or death is sustainable with or without the Shiite faith. Finally, I want to tell you that I watch and share your magnificent series with Al-Mayadeen, Demystifying Iran. I think the next series should be about demystifying Western democracy as a system of government. A million thanks, Professor and brother in arms. We will continue to follow and be at your service for anything that your great country, your great people, and that revolution may ask for us.
Thank you very much for having me. And it was a great pleasure and an honor speaking with our friends across the world.
Thank you.
کیست پهلوان به هر پهلوانی که عالم میگه علی ابن ابی طالب مولای ما پهلواناست سلطان نجف می و پیمان نجف یا علی 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 دارم خان نجف جای دیوان نجف بشو مهمان نجف یا علی 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 جانم علی جانم علی جانم علی جانم علی جانم علی